In this episode, we'll take a look at the Godox SL-200W LED light. On most of my lighting reviews, people ask, hey, can you review some of the Godox lights as well? Well, here we go. Thanks to PerGear for providing this to us for this review. Let's run through the pros and then the cons. First of all, the one thing I really like about the Godox SL-200W is that it's all one unit. There's no awkward external AC adapters or control boxes. It's all in the head, and then there's just a cable from there that runs to the AC power. We used our Seikonic C800 spectrometer to take a look at the color quality and our other photometrics. You get a lot of light output from this light. That is a really great thing. It sits somewhere between the Aputure 300D Mark II and the Aputure 120D Mark II in terms of overall light output, almost twice as much as the 120D2. And in terms of color quality, it's really in the same ballpark. So they've done a nice job there. What does that mean in practical terms? The CRI and the TLCI are both high. The SSI, which I think is actually the more meaningful measurement, is about 73. So that does mean you will get potentially some color rendering issues, just like you will with almost all LED lights that are daylight balanced. And that's true of the Aputure lights. That's true of pretty much every pro-level LED light that I've used so far. You'll get better color rendering, sometimes up into the mid to high 80s, on the tungsten balanced lights. So that's one thing to consider. If you're doing something that's color critical, the Godox is probably not the one you want to choose. It includes some barn doors and some effects gels, which are nice. Also includes a wireless remote. This works in the 470 megahertz range, so that's a pro and a con. Obviously, it's nice to be able to control the light remotely. So if you especially have it up high, for example, you can still control the dimmer or turn it on and off. However, the 470 megahertz range is something that can actually interfere with some wireless microphone systems. So wireless microphone systems using the UHF frequencies may run into some problems there, so be careful of that. Overall, the build quality is decent, mostly metal and plastic with a metal yoke and a large tilt knob. The large tilt knob is plastic, and the knob that you use to tighten it to your stand is also plastic. The headline feature, of course, is the price. At the time of this review, it comes in at $369, which is a tremendous value for what you're getting with the amount of light output, with a Bowen's mount so you can attach various accessories. So in this case, for example, it comes with the reflector and the barn doors that connect to the front of the reflector, but also you can use modifiers from other companies. So in this case, for example, I didn't have the Godox softbox, so I'm using the Aputure Light Dome II. In this case, the Godox is the key light. It is at 50% of its output. We're running the camera at ISO 400, aperture is set to f4, and we're shooting at 23.976 with the shutter angle set to 180 degrees to give you an idea of where this sits. So for those on cameras that don't have shutter angles, that's going to be about 1/48th of a second, 1/50th of a second in that range. So that gives you kind of a sense for how much light output you'll get from this kind of light. I think it's really enough light output that you're going to be able to do a lot of things with this light. Now, every product has some cons and no product is perfect. Let's run through the cons on this one. First of all, and the thing that kind of bothers me the most, to be honest, is the fan in this thing is loud. Here's a sample. I'm using a Sennheiser MKH416 shotgun microphone boom just out of the frame right here above me. The front of the softbox is probably, I would say, about a meter from me here, about a little over a yard, for those that measure that way. And then the back of the light is on the other side of the softbox. So it's probably sitting closer to 5 to 6 feet away, maybe 1.5 meters, approaching 2 meters. And this is what it sounds like. And here's a sample with the Aputure 120D Mark II. And in this case, we had to set the 120D to 90 out of 100 in terms of the dimmer, just to get the same exposure. This is an audio sample for that case. One thing that was a little odd, I don't know if it's a massive con, it depends on your particular situation, but the included reflector has a hole in it by design for thermal management, and that means that light leaks out of the side of it. So that's good that they're thinking about thermal management, but that's a really odd sort of engineering choice on how to manage heat. It does let the heat out, of course, but It also lets light out, and if you're trying to not bring up the ambient light on your set for your lighting design, that's just sort of a weird thing. So you could cover it with black wrap, but then you're not, are you in danger of overheating the LED chip? I don't know. The stand screw knob is a little bit difficult to tighten. It's workable, but it's not the most convenient. As I mentioned before, the wireless remote can potentially interfere with UHF wireless microphone systems in the 470 megahertz range. Depends on the part of the world you're in and whether you're using that type of wireless system. So that's going to be things like your like Sennheiser G3, G4s. I think you can get in that range. I know, for example, my Audio Limited A10 runs in that range as well. One other item, which may or may not be a con depending on your use cases, is that the Godox does not have a DMX input or output, so you cannot control it from a light board. The biggest question I anticipate is this a killer of the Aputure COB lights? And from my point of view, no, not really. This is probably a good fit for someone who is on a really, really tight budget and are not necessarily going to use it in close to the talent, so you can avoid that fan noise, because that fan noise, to my ears, is a little too much. Like, you have to back these lights up quite a ways to keep them from interfering with sound. And even with a very directional microphone like the MKH416, still picking up a little bit too much of that for my taste. Can you clean it up in post? Yeah, of course. Does that affect the overall audio quality? Probably. Is that a way you want to work? That's up to you. If I were buying for the long term, I think I'd probably buy the Aputure light. There are some thoughts on the Godox SL-200W. I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you've not already subscribed, make sure you do that. And we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk to you soon.